Hi, class. I want to talk to you guys briefly about the 1979 $1.5 billion Chrysler loan guarantee. So a little background. In 1973, OPEC, the oil-producing economic countries, mostly Middle Eastern countries and Venezuela, elected to cut production. And this led to a shortage. Gas prices rose, and there were gas stations that ran out of gas. There were long lines. It was a long, hot summer. It was a problem. Now it goes away, but through the rest of the 1970s, gas prices steadily rise. And by 1979, Chrysler has got a problem. Chrysler, Dodge, they really focused on muscle cars, sports cars, fast cars. So think of the Charger, big engine, fast. Today's Challenger. And they really didn't have a car that was fuel efficient. Now, General Motors and Ford, they did. And of course, Honda and Toyota, they had some nice options for cars that got good gas mileage. So by 1979, Chrysler is really struggling. They are on the verge of bankruptcy. And the Carter administration, President Jimmy Carter, his administration decides to act on this. And the government is not going to loan money to Chrysler, but they're going to guarantee the loans. So banks ultimately loan $1.5 billion to Chrysler. And if Chrysler is not able to survive and compete and pay back the loan, the United States government will. Now, the Carter administration looked at this very carefully, and they made this decision on a number of factors. One, if Chrysler does go bankrupt, the government's going to have to pay through safety nets, so unemployment insurance. Chrysler employed a lot of people in Metro Detroit. So unemployment costs will rise. And after unemployment, if you haven't found another job or you haven't been called back to work, the next safety net would be something of aid, whether it be food stamps. Today we have bridge cards. And that costs money. There's health insurance cost. My child. So it's important to keep Chrysler in the game. If they don't, the government's going to have to pay in this manner. Neighborhoods would decline. And the Carter administration looked at this and they correctly came to the conclusion Detroit was too important to lose. Another factor is Ford, General Motors, Honda, Toyota, Volkswagen. They will gain more clout and the consumer will suffer too. Ultimately, the biggest reason the Carter administration guaranteed this $1.5 billion was they believed in Chrysler. They believed that Chrysler Corporation could produce a fuel-efficient car, get back on their feet, and compete with their rivals. And they did. They come up with the K car, pretty capable car, not the best looking car in the world, but pretty capable with gas mileage. And within 5 years, they pay the $1.5 billion back. The government does not have to pay anything. And Chrysler in the mid to late 80s enjoyed some successful years under Lee Iacocca, very capable engineer at Ford Motor. He is the man who came up with the Mustang. And he ended up being a outstanding president for Chrysler. Now, eventually, Chrysler is going to run into trouble again. And this is important for us to think about, because when the Carter administration in 1979 proposed to take this action, there were opposing voices. This is not how business operates in the USA. Governments do not give out handouts to companies. If they can't survive, they go away. If the market decides that there's a need for another car maker, someone will step forward. And as you guys have no doubt read in your textbook, in the early 20th century, there were hundreds of automakers, and many of them failed. So that is an argument that was presented in 1979. Now, most historians, and most people, if you talk to them that remember this, believe the Carter administration made the right call. And it's hard to argue against it. You know, Chrysler did very well. They repaid the money. So it's hard to argue against the Carter administration. It looks like they did make the right call. And of course, in 2008, we have a similar situation where the Obama administration actually loans money to General Motors to get them out of a disastrous situation they found themselves in 2008. And again, this was met with heavy criticism. People would come up with the term government motors. But ultimately, General Motors paid back all the money. They're doing well now. There were some questionable advantages that General Motors was given. They were able to get back in the stock market. So General Motors stock was useless. And then they came up with a new stock, General Motors, but that had value. So there is some criticism to how it worked out. But again, losing GM would have been a tremendous blow. It would have given Ford a large advantage. And ultimately, you know, prices for cars would probably go up with a big dent in competition with GM going down. So these are things that I want you guys to think about. And I want to make sure you have a good understanding of what happened there in 1979. And in 2008, we can have some discussion, very similar situation that GM had to navigate. Now, just a couple observations. You guys are doing really well. I am looking at your quiz scores. I've been monitoring your discussion posts. They're all, really good. You guys are doing a great job. Keep up the good work. This summer semester is a sprint. It's 8 weeks. And, we're going to be busy, but you guys are doing a great job. And I hope you enjoyed this brief discussion. And I will keep on watching how you guys do. And perhaps we'll have another discussion down the road. Thank you.